My name is Neil Parkinson. I'm the Archives and Collections Manager of the Royal College of Art, which is where we are today. The archive has expanded really substantially over the last 20 years, partly because students are always making new things. There's a constant influx of new and exciting material into our permanent collections. But another way that it's really changed in my time is we've really embraced digitisation. The reason the posters are here, partly because in about 2014, there was a big retrospective exhibition of the last 50 years of graphic design at the RCA. And then when we got some external funding, we were able to buy this extraordinary A0 flatbed scanner that was able to just make these incredibly faithful copies of the posters, beautifully color managed, very, very high resolution, really true to the original source material. And we were able to catalogue them all. We worked hard to identify who did the posters where we could. A huge number of them were anonymous. Students just didn't sign them and they just viewed them as quite ephemeral. So we often, even now, we probably don't know who did a majority of the posters, but we have done quite a lot of research to try and find out. So we're very happy to have them as part of the overall RCA archive and make the links between what the graphic design program produced and what other programs produced. I mean, I would say there's such a wealth of fantastic material in this particular collection. There are literally thousands of wonderful images. It was quite hard to narrow it down to a selection for King and McGaw. There were a few sort of really obvious things. So the graphics RCA poster from a big exhibition in 1963 is such a wonderful, such classic design. That seemed like an obvious one. Other ones were selected, I guess, because they were sort of quirky and of their time, or doing something different that was unusual for their times. There's a very good broad spread. So there's posters from the RCA Film Society. There's a lot that just tell you something about the social life of the college at the time, what sort of ad hoc exhibitions students were putting on, what parties they were organising in the junior common room, which bands were coming to play that week. So they're all kind of these amazing two-dimensional time capsules, really. So a lot of the posters are to advertise the degree shows or the diploma shows, which were and still are a really fundamental part of the RCA calendar, the real sort of culmination of students' hard work, where they get to show off all of the amazing things that they've created in the studio. And these posters were often designed either by current graphic design students or recent alumni of that program, recent graduates, to give them kind of their first big break with a commercial commission. And they really changed extraordinarily throughout the 60s, 70s and 80s, and they very much reflect the kind of change in design aesthetics. In the King and McGaw section, we've got a nice one from 1969, which is done in a very kind of slightly psychedelic Alice in Wonderland, opening all these doors onto different aspects of the college, very much in primary colours, like going down the rabbit hole vibe for visiting the RCA show. And then we've got a couple from 1983 and 1986 that are quite sort of similar in theme. The 1983 one has all of these sort of streaks of coloured lights designed to represent all the different programs, all the different disciplines at the college. And then the one from 1986 has these sort of constellations and these shooting stars. And what they're both trying to do is kind of represent the enormity, the multiplicity of talent and innovation from all the different programs that the public could come and experience at the college. And then there's one just for a graphic design show in its own right from 1962, the Graphic Design Diploma Show. And I love this one because the students whoever designed it has made it look like a sheet of letraset. But it's not a sheet of letraset, it is using letterpress to sort of indentations of letters. Some of the letters have been removed to spell out Graphic Design Diploma Show 62. So there's like gaps in these rows of letters. Someone who remembers letraset in the days before desktop publishing, I particularly enjoy this one. And it's typical of graphic design students drawing attention to the tools of their trade in the poster. Some of the posters are for much broader exhibitions that were on very sort of specific themes, but brought together a whole range of talent. So one of them was called Graphics RCA, and this was in 1963. Graphics RCA was to celebrate the first 15 years of the School of Graphic Design and all the successes that it could count. The first wave of graphic design graduates was phenomenally successful, and this exhibition was a big retrospective look back at all of those successes. And the poster was designed by a graphic design student, I think she was in her first year, Thelma Roscoe, and it has all of these incredible sort of like slightly psychedelic coloured squares. And then a couple of years later, there was another legendary exhibition at the RCA called What's Yours? A New Look at the Local. And this was sponsored by 5 leading breweries in the UK. And it was an attempt to really reimagine the Great British pub. They were tasked with really completely reconceptualizing the pub, and they all came up with different things. So glass students came up with new designs for pint glasses, furniture students reinvented the bar stool, interior design students reconceptualized how a pub interior should look. It was really incredible, the sort of things that they came up with. And the What's Yours poster that is part of this selection is actually not the final poster design. A different design was chosen. And quite often for these major college commissions, different students would have a go at designing, and we have different versions in the archive, so we can see which ones didn't quite make it, but they're still always really interesting and really useful to compare the different options. It's obviously a kind of a spin on Manet's famous painting, and instead of the usual people in the background, they've been replaced with these kind of groovy 60s caricatures as if to like bring the painting right up to date, which in a way is what the exhibition was trying to do, reinvent something that's familiar and staid and actually make it slap bang in the middle of the 1960s. And we have a lot of the posters that the students designed to promote different dances, bands, bar parties, all sorts of things. There's one advertising a painter's party, which always amuses me because it says in small print, graphic designers welcome. And it seems very much that sometimes students were in their own individual silos and didn't really cross over into other programs, and there might be a sort of friendly rivalry. But there was always actually a really sort of healthy interdisciplinary relationship. So a lot of the posters, and probably one of the richest themes in the whole of the collection, is the film posters designed to promote screenings held by the RCA Film Society. And the Film Society was set up in about 1949, so around the same time as the School of Graphic Design. And they showed things like Kurosawa and Cocteau and Bergman and all of these sorts of people. And a really sort of formative part of students' understanding of visual culture. It's hard for us to imagine now in the days of streaming, but it was really difficult to see sort of classic films that you'd heard of, but you couldn't easily get to see them. These amazing programs were put on for students, and not only was it really an integral part of their broader education, but they also became very lively social events as well, a bit like sort of bar parties, and everybody would stamp and clap whenever the reels were changed. They could be quite riotous, sort of smoky affairs. The designs are often quite sort of challenging. You often have to really sort of squint at them to work out what film were they actually advertising here. So they take a little bit of decoding, but that's really satisfying as well, especially because they are always bringing kind of new perspectives on things that otherwise we might think we already know.